This podcast was brought to you by the good people at Audible. Get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial right now at audibletrial.com/nothingbutstatic. Hello and welcome to another dimension in quality, as Chris promised us last week. I had a feeling,
God, yeah, what did I say?
You said that we were going to travel through Lion's Mane to another dimension of podcast quality.
Well, that's because you did your thing where you go and your brain goes, oh, I think it's gone badly. What should I do? I'm going to point that out.
No, it's guilt. It's not. I think you're missing the. It's guilt. It's like, shit, I fucked up. I should apologize now, so I have to apologize next week. But no,
there might be people listening. There might be people listening going, it wasn't that bad until you pointed it out.
Well, the thing is, Chris, that's one thing. But when you listen to it back, because I listened to it back today, because I was editing it today, you'll notice that you very strongly agree. Very quickly.
Well, it wasn't good.
You literally, you're like, because normally I'm like, oh man, I'm not sure how this is going. I feel a bit tired now. Sorry, guys. And you'll be like, it's fine. This time you're like, fuck yeah. Like, you basically immediately back it up, which makes me spiral further because I'm like, oh shit, even Chris thinks it didn't go well.
You can't blame me. You're the one. Like, something is said and your tone just like, all of a sudden, you just are suddenly like, tired.
Listen to that episode back. You hear it right from and it's not when you pointed out. You thought it was when I got distracted by the drill. I swear to God, there's a point. No, I swear. Listen to it back. 30 odd minutes in, I start to do this thing where you'll like finish a sentence, and then I would normally have a thought, and there's just pauses, and I go, yeah. I also think that, and I'll like, do you know what I mean? And then I'll string something together, and then you'll start talking, and you'll make an interesting point, and then it'll come back to me, and it'll be a big pause. Yeah, and I think, I think I agree with Chris. Like, you could hear my brain switching off. I was just tired. What we've discovered now, what's really bad about saying this is we've learnt this lesson before, and we refuse to keep learning this lesson. We always know 2 is fine. 2 is never a problem. 3 pushes it, but is doable. 4, we know we've done it a few times. 4 is never good. The 4th one is always suffers. It's just the limit of how long we can do
I
this
honestly
for.
think if 3 is only good if the episode is good. If we do 3 and the 3rd episode is a bit meh, the 3rd's a disaster.
Very possibly. But
yeah,
I still stand by. We've learnt the lesson before that 4 in a row is not a good idea. Yet we persist. Yet we continue to try. I mean, in this case, it was so we could make it work for the 4 episodes released in a single day. But still, Jesus.
Yeah.
Anyway, this welcome to Steven University. Whinging aside, put that in a little box, file it away under Jesus Christ, didn't you moan enough about it last week? And we'll get talking about this week's episode. So this week, of course, we are discussing Dewey Wins.
Dewey Wins.
An episode that we are now watching outside of the context of a several-month hiatus, and therefore it probably fares a lot better. Chris, what was it about?
So this episode sees Stephen return. The Crystal Gems are pretty paranoid, but they let him walk outside with Connie. He cracks a few jokes about, don't worry, I'm not going back into space. And Connie's upset with him. And it turns out Lion's upset with him as well, which there kind of were hints at in the last one, I think. Like, if you watch Lion's behaviour with him thinking about it, he's not too but then again, when is Lion ever like that anyway? True. So Stephen kind of doesn't really understand why Connie's not excited to hear what he's got to say, and Connie's just very clearly upset because he left, and she kind of says, but what about Stevonnie? We could have done this. And she does, I remembered, like, when it's going down, like, she does say, let's fuse, and he's like, no. And they don't fuse, and they don't form Stevonnie, sorry. So Stephen's kind of miffed that Connie's upset. He doesn't really get that there's a problem. He texts her the next day quite haphazardly and says he can't hang out because something's going on with the mayor. What that's referring to is Stephen goes to see Sadie, informs her about Lars, says that he needs to tell her his parents, and she's sort of his dry run. She seems concerned, but he's like, oh, we can see him anytime, don't worry about it. I have a funny feeling we won't, but we'll come back to that. And then basically Stephen completely ignores everything else that's going on to try and help the mayor, who is it Kiki's gran is opposing him in the race for mayor. So Stephen decides to fight for the mayor. He tells everyone it's because her main point is, aliens are abducting people. This is nuts. He goes, it wasn't the mayor's fault, it was mine. They look like they're coming round. They agree to hold a debate. The Nan gives a very impassioned speech, and the mayor, despite Stephen doing all he can and staying up all night to help him, the mayor backs down and says, no, she's the right person to be mayor. I shouldn't be. And yeah, Stephen is kind of miffed at the mayor, and he kind of says, well, maybe this is how Connie feels, and he messages Connie, but Connie's ignoring him. So, fun fact, by the way, Dan, saying realised then, I realised, because this will probably explain it, because before we started airing, we were kind of working out our schedule, and Dan was like, well, maybe we can try and do like 2 or 3 in this session. There's the dodgy 3. And I was kind of like, nah. So one of the reasons for that is just the vision of Stephen with the blurry eyes. I'm running on 2 hours sleep. So that's why I'd worry about the 3rd, because I don't know if my brain capacity
you buried the lead. You're running on 2 hours sleep. Why was how? First of all, how did this not immediately come up? How was it not? Hey Chris, how you doing? 2 hours sleep, Dan, is how I'm doing.
Because I just forgot. I've just been cracking on, and I worked because I remember last time we did this when I think after I saw Avengers: Infinity War, it was check out next episode, folks, because it was. It was the second. I think we recorded the day after Infinity War. We recorded 2 things, and during the second one, I began to crash. So let's see.
How much sugar have you got in your system?
Not much. No. I've had 1 glass of Fanta. Oh no, I had a pint of Coke before, about 4 o'clock.
Because that might be like the answer. Is just like get some sugar in you.
Get some sugar in me. Well, it's funny. So. And we will talk about the episode, but I still, this story always amuses me. There was a time back in uni, Dan, you and I lived with a guy called Tom.
I remember very well.
And one of my favourite Tom memories is Tom and I. You were quite good with the scripts and with the assignments and the essays, apart from one previously mentioned. But otherwise, you were quite good. You were usually handed in before us. Tom and I, a bit more.
Bit more last minute.
Not Kev. Huh?
Bit more last minute.
Yeah. Never like in a lazy way. Just I don't know, always seemed to happen that way. And one of my favourite uni memories is we were handing in our final thing, and it was 5 a.m. of the night before or the morning of. And our deadlines were always like 12, weren't they? They were always like midday, maybe?
Midday, yeah. They were always midday.
And Tom turns to me and he's like, and I'm like, oh, fucking hell, I can't. No, I think Robin, our other friend, was just like, I can't believe we're here again. Like it's 5 a.m. What are you two doing? And Tom turns to me and he goes, yeah, man. No, I think Robin had given up on us. She'd gone. But anyway, Tom turns to me and he goes, oh man, when are we gonna learn, eh? And I'm like, mate, this is the last thing we're ever handing in for uni. The conclusion is we've not learned. Like, we have never learned this lesson. Like,
was I cozily tucked up in bed getting actual sleep at this point because I'd handed mine in the day before?
Yeah, because you'd have done it and given it in the day before. Or like yours would be ready to give in that morning.
The thing is, it's weird that like that because I am very much a live to my means kind of guy. Like, I always feel like I don't have quite enough money because even when I earn more money, I just start spending into it faster. Like, I'm good at living to my means, which is both a good and a bad thing because it means I'm sort of like taking advantage of everything and I'm not like, saving pointlessly, or anything like that. But like, yeah. Like, same with like not the same with deadlines a little bit really, because if you give me 2 weeks to do something, then theoretically it would be done within the exact 2 week time frame. Do you know what I mean? But there was something about uni where and when I get long term deadlines, there's just something about being done ahead of the deadline that's super satisfying.
I think the worst it ever got was a second year script. We had to write a 45-minute script and we had to hand in 2 drafts, a first draft and a final draft so they could compare the difference. And instead of doing that, I did a draft, and then instead of doing like a second draft, I just made that draft shit. So I took out scenes. I just crapped up the final draft. Not as bad as someone. I know someone that did a find and replace and just changed one character's name. And that was his submission.
The thing is, though,
anyway, I don't know. Is it
the
safe,
process I use for
safe
writing...
to admit that? It's not really cheating, I'd argue. I feel suddenly guilty. Is someone going to take my degree away, Dan? Like...
But here's the thing. This is what I never understood about that. Is did you not ever write a first draft? Like, how hard would it have been to just like... You must have edited it. Like you can't. It didn't just spew out onto the page. It
wasn't.
Form.
Yeah, I think
you
in actual
shot yourself
fact,
in the foot. Just save the first one.
In actual fact, I think I opened up I opened up my actual first draft and felt that they weren't different enough. I think was what actually happened. So I didn't technically buck the system or anything. It was legitimate. He says, hoping that the degree police
I'm calling the degree police right now, mate. I've got them on the other line.
No, don't, because that kind of shit makes me paranoid.
I'm just saying, though. I was to get that degree taken off you.
I'm going to want you to cut this now.
It's not happening.
No, I did, honestly. It wasn't. I think I did just change a few things, but it wasn't. It was a legitimate first
Your
draft.
paranoia is so funny sometimes. Anyway, moving on. Dewey Wins.
So,
thoughts, Chris?
I've still not learned, and I'm currently doing a training course, and I had an assignment due today, and as you can tell by the 2 hours sleep, I've not really learnt my lesson. So that's why I'm tired.
Did it last night.
Long way round to get there, but let's be honest, there's not much to say about this episode. So stay tuned next week. I'm gonna vow now to keep my energy up, Dan, and let's see how that goes. So is this a good episode? Yes. Is the Connie element and dealing with the aftermath of Stephen disappearing into space and a cool plot? Yes. Is the mayor stuff fun? It's all right. It's quite nice to see him admit that in that position. It's not. It doesn't feel like a complete plot because the episode has to do so many other things, but it's fine. Would I have preferred a Lars plot? Yes. And does Stephen just ignoring Lars feel a bit odd? Yes.
Interesting.
And that's the issue with this episode.
Well, now that's interesting for a couple of reasons, because I actually think that the structure of this episode kind of makes it forgivable. They've been quite clever about it, in my opinion, in that Stephen immediately is sort of telling everyone, catching everyone up, and the way they write it, his guilt for what's happened is and how it's affecting Mayor Dewey drags him into that. But they cover the main factors. They cover him telling Sadie, which was concern number one, was that you need to really have that scene. And they cut into it, so you don't have to hear the explanation. You cut into Sadie having just been told, going, oh, what? He's in space? Like, very clever. Let's not waste time retelling a story we just got told. And then and this I found really interesting. They made the choice to have Stephen and Sadie be on their way to be telling Lars's parents, and Stephen gets distracted by the stuff that's happening in the town, and Sadie ends up doing that herself on her own. So it's clever in the sense of it stops us from having to deal with the Lars of it all and have that moment where Stephen sits down and tells the parents, because with Sadie you can do the gag of Lars is in space and she's just been told the story. The parents, you want the difficulty and the emotion and the struggle of your son's in space, and truthfully at this point he was fine when I saw him, but that was a period of time ago. But what the benefit of it is that you do get this sort of secondary thing, which is Stephen sort of being so overwhelmed with everything, so much going on, that he's getting distracted to the point that he's sort of forgetting to do things like that, or putting things like that aside, maybe out of guilt. You know what I mean? Maybe he feels so guilty for the last situation, he doesn't feel like he can face them, and he is quite happy to take on the distraction of Dewey, to allow him to escape having to have that conversation. Maybe he won't admit that to himself, but there's a certain amount of me that thinks maybe that's what's going on, or maybe it's the situation with Dewey is again guilt so strong that it pulls him out of the Lars thing. Either way, you're establishing Steven's sort of level of guilt. And I think one of the things that works surprisingly well, considering that the episode is what it is that I didn't find myself going, why isn't he immediately going back for Lars? On the basis of, first of all, Connie took Lion. But second of all, it all flows into each other so immediately that there's a part of me that goes like, yeah, he's gotten completely pulled into this for whatever reason, you know. But I suppose he does spend the night helping the mayor win a mayoral election while his mate is up on Homeworld, potentially being hunted. So there is an element of maybe he should be trying to look for Lion.
Yeah, I just think there's an element of surely he'd get the gems and I suppose they're wanted to. Yeah, it's odd. It just feels like, I think my worry, it's almost not for what this episode does. It's what I think it means, and what I think it means is we're about to get a Stephen and Connie arc, and they're going to leave Lars for a good few episodes. And that annoys me because they leave it in such a good place. And I get it from a thematic point of view.
Well, also, actually, from a practical perspective, what can they do? They can't bring him back.
Well, he can go to them, but I suppose the argument is it's way more interesting to see Stephen go back a bit later and the situation has changed, maybe, or like rather than just them sitting in a cave, you know, you have something else going on. That's the more interesting story.
No, but I mean, practically from Stephen's perspective, though, what can he do? Okay, he can show up where Lars is. He can't take Lars home through his hair, as we've established.
He could turn up with weapons. He could turn up and give advice.
Okay. That's not as immediate, though, as like... you're right, but what Lars needs is to be rescued, and he can't be rescued the way that we're thinking of anyway, I suppose. So in reality, maybe it's not that... Maybe it's not as pressing as it might seem. Just playing devil's advocate to it, because I do think you're right. There is a part in the back of your brain going, maybe you should be going back and checking on Lars. But at the same time, in reality, like Steven's going, well, I can't help Lars. I can help Matt Dewey. Because practically speaking, what could Steven do to help Lars right now?
But is it not better to have him say that? Is it not better to clarify that to the audience?
Yeah, maybe you're right.
Because from what you've said, it sounds like it wasn't a popular move this episode.
It was. I got the vibe it was divisive at the time, but I do feel like that was heavily influenced by the fact it was the first episode back for a very long time, and it wasn't immediately dealing with all the craziness we'd just seen. So I think I don't think that's reflective of the actual episode. Personally, I think had this aired shortly after Wanted, no, I don't think many people would have been too bothered by the shift in tone because, as we've established in the past, you know, it's fine to just sort of, as long as we're getting a mixture of both, I don't really care what kind of episodes we get. I need to put like oil on this chair. It makes so many noises at the moment, Chris. Sorry, it's like squeaking all over the place. Not as bad as the guy drilling last week, but that's a different story. I say drilling, he was like metal sanding. Nuts. I've never seen anything like it. Anyway, sparks going everywhere. What was I saying? God, how has that guy distracted me 2 episodes on the trot and he's not even here?
I was going to say, you should have brought him up.
I know. No, but like...
people's perception.
Yeah, so the perception of the episode, I think, was very much harmed by its positioning. I think in reality, had it aired shortly thereafter Wanted, I don't think people would have been... Even the people who didn't like it would have to have admitted that it's kind of inoffensive. Like, do you know what I mean? There's nothing bad about this episode. There's nothing groundbreaking about this episode. Well, yeah, that's the thing as well. And they are starting to establish something very interesting about Connie. So let's talk about that for a minute. I mean, it's a bit ham-fisted, Stephen realizing why she's mad. Like, the dialogue is really on the nose for this show when Stephen realizes, because he's going like, and maybe, you know, yeah, I'm mad. I thought we were going to do this together and you've let me down, and oh, that must be how Connie feels. And it's like, oh, this show has been subtler than that by quite some way. But beyond that, the actual premise of it is really, really cool because it's, I'll be honest with you, it's something you consider. You think like, oh, maybe they'll be mad at him for leaving. But specifically choosing Connie for that reason was a pleasant surprise to me. Or it would have been had they not put the first 2 minutes of this episode out at Comic-Con.
It's a weird 2 minutes to put out. It's not really like... It's not the most like fist pumping, woo kind of.
Oh, don't worry. They put out
Clip,
a
is
second clip with that I can't tell you about yet because for a future episode, and it was a fist pumping one, but it spoils a whole episode, in my opinion.
Right. Okay.
So trust me, they hit both. They hit the here's what's coming next, and the here's something fist pumpy, and I was kind of pissed at the fist pumpy. We'll talk about that in a future ep.
Okay.
So
yeah, I think I think it makes a lot of sense. And I love the notion that because you see events like this all the time, and like, you know, you see episodes like this, and there's this sense of, you know, this will change everything, and then ultimately, often they don't change anything. I think the worst offender for that is The Day of the Doctor by Doctor Who, because it could have changed everything, and Stephen Moffat chose for it not to. I like the fact that there's still, even beyond Lars, even beyond the doubt of the Rose shattering Pink Diamond story, there are ramifications for what happened with Wanted. It feels like, you know, it feels like the biggest thing the show has done at this point, right up there with Mirror Gem, Ocean Gem, and that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it does solidify Wanted's position as like a very impactful piece because it feels like the effects of the contents of that episode are going to be felt throughout the next, you know, at least 10, 15 episodes in some way, form. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
It feels like...
Which is awesome.
Yeah, it feels like... And it's the perfect level because I think that's why Moffat struggled with Doctor Who, because Day of the Doctor could have changed everything, but you don't want to change everything, ever. You want to change enough stuff to keep it fresh, but keep it similar enough to feel like the same show. And that's the dilemma, is finding that balance. And I think Steven Universe always pitches its events perfectly, where, you know, when something huge happens that sort of will shift the show dramatically, they sort of pitch it so perfectly that it has a big enough effect to keep the drama exciting and the characters moving and all that stuff, but it's never so absurdly like groundbreaking that like we have a season where Steven is stuck out in space. We're still going to be in Beach City. We're still going to be... Do you know what I mean? They found a way for us to sort of have the cake and eat it too. I know it's a phrase I use a lot on the show, but that's because this show often achieves multiple things in the same breath, and it's amazing because a lot of shows, you know, don't get to do that. You know, excuse me, I had a little hiccup there. So I think what's great about this is like it's like we're not being robbed of the show continuing to be the show, but we are still getting the ripple effects of Wanted, which makes the big event episodes like Wanted feel like they matter and not like they could just be erased from the canon. It wouldn't even matter, and you know, it would like.
Yeah.
Sadly, you could take Day of the Doctor out of canon and it would barely have an effect. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
There was no immediate ripple other than the first few minutes of the next episode.
But even that, I think the bigger crime with that is that I think they could have done what you're talking about. You could have had the Doctor going somewhere because he thinks Gallifrey's there, and then he goes.
Yeah, but how many times do you do that? Moffat described that himself in an interview. He said, you know, great, the Doctor's looking for Gallifrey. He opens up the doors to the TARDIS. Yep, not here. And then it's like, what are you doing? He like,
well, you just don't have him find Gallifrey a season later or 2 seasons later.
Yeah,
That's the bigger thing.
100%.
But you're right. I think Steven Universe pitches it a hell of a lot better than that, and I think that I'm loving that. I'm very intrigued as to what the next episode is, because there's so many ways you could go with it. You either directly address it, or you have Steven doing something else and it being referenced. Like maybe the gems are like, "Hey, where's Connie?" and Steven like looks sad or something. Like. So I'd be very intrigued as to how they do it. I'm confident we're not seeing Lars again for a while, which I imagine was the thought when it aired, and I imagine that kind of annoyed some people. But I think it's partly because that's something that wouldn't happen if the show had consistent scheduling, because you'd go, well, we probably will see him at some point this season.
Yeah.
And that'll be fine, because we'll get that in a few weeks. But when you're going, we might not see him for a year, like, it's a very different beast.
I've actually just realised that we might have the episodes in the wrong order, Chris, going forward from here. I'm just double checking. This one's right, but I think the next episode, I've got it listed as one thing, but I think it's something else. Shit, indeed.
It feels like more of an off-air discussion, but we can chat about that if you want.
I don't want to chat about it. I'm just pointing it out to you now. So if you need to, well, we'll just have to deal with it, won't we? We'll deal with it after. Yeah. It's fine. Don't worry about it, Chris.
Okay, cliffhanger. What episode will I be crashing and tired? And what episode will we actually be discussing? Now, if that's not a teaser for next week, I don't know what is, Dan.
Oh, yeah. What do you want then from going forward from here, just in general? Like, how do, because you're right. They've sort of laid it out a little bit. They've started a thread. They've started this Connie thread. Do you want an episode next week to settle that thread, or do you think they should run it through 2 episodes, 3 episodes? How long do you think you sort of run that thread through?
I want it to be almost like the bomb length. I think so. 5 episodes.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
We're done.
Because that's what they've done in the past, isn't it? They've sort of done like the Sardonyx thing happened across 5 episodes.
Yeah, I don't think I'd like it to last more than the next episode, but I don't think it needs to be a season arc. And I think that I'm just very invested in how they deal with it, because I don't want Stephen moping either. I kind of want it to just be a background thing. Maybe the Gems get involved. Maybe Greg gets involved. I don't know. But I'd want it to be more than resolved next week, and I want it to be more than stretched out needlessly. Partly because it kind of feels like we're not going to deal with Lars until they've made up. So there's an element of, okay, hurry up and make up, and then let's see some Lars.
Yeah, I see what you say. Because, like, yeah, but I suppose though, I suppose if they'd gone the other way, you'd be having the same questions in reverse. So if they'd gone the way of Stephen being like, okay, I've come back, now you guys are caught up, let's all jump into Lion, let's go help Lars, do whatever, then you'd be going, well, don't we have some stuff to deal with, just in the fact that, like, he gave himself up? Like, do they not have some feelings towards that? Not necessarily what's happening exactly with Connie, but, like, because you wouldn't necessarily expect that, but a part of you would be going, well, there's got to be some unresolved shit going on here, right? Like, because
I don't think I would. I think it's just because they've done that story that I personally am like, oh, yeah, that's a good story. That's a cool one to do. I don't know if I'd have gone, where are the ramifications of that?
Right.
Personally.
Fair enough. Yeah. I feel like I did, but it's hard to say in hindsight because it's obviously been, it's been a
but
few months since I've seen these originally.
You also had 9 months to mull it over.
I also had 6 years to mull it over.
What did you think of the mayor giving in stuff? I thought that was quite sweet. I thought that was quite a an adult theme for this show. I thought it was not in the content. It wasn't rude or anything, but just that the kind of, you're on a kids' cartoon about aliens. You're watching a mayor break down and say that someone else has a better idea of what his community is. Like, you wouldn't think you'd see that. So I thought that was really good as well.
Well, I really liked it, and I also really liked the debate particularly because I really I thought they did a really good job showing why Nanafwa was maybe more suited. Like, she's like, let's stop blaming the mayor and let's start working together to do something about these things. It's not helping us to just keep pointing fingers. Let's band together as a community and work on our issues. Work on the things that are wrong with society, because we're putting all our energy and effort into pointing a finger at a figurehead. And there's a better solution. And while there are maybe some real world parallels you could draw there, and I'm not unconvinced that's not what they were going for, I do think that there's a really clever story in there, because Dewey has always been quite a passive mayor. And that's kind of the point they raise in this episode as well, which is like, this is nothing to do with Dewey. Yeah, exactly. He's not doing anything. He's taking no involvement in this. Maybe he should. Maybe he should be taking more interest in what's going on in this fucking town. So there's some really cool sort of like ideas in there as well about that.
And because I'm really kind of keen to see that storyline play out as well. Just even if it's just in the background subtly, so we're kept up to date with what's going on, and you can do some cool stories about, because how are they planning to address this? Is it to try and run the Crystal Gems out of town? Like, I think there's some really good story potential. So at this point, were you thinking similar? And what did you want from that? Did you want a whole episode about it? Did you want to just see it in the background? What were your
honestly?
thoughts?
I think I partially thought I partially was under the impression it wouldn't be a long-term thing. I thought, they'll undo this 2 weeks' time, whatever. I mean, it's not. I don't think it's a huge spoiler to sort of say that they do kind of commit to the sort of the content of this episode, and they do some interesting stuff with it. But my honest to God thought was that like they'd probably undo it pretty quickly, because I kept thinking like I don't know how, in a world where we've got Steven running around and Lars out in space and like all this other shit going on, how can we continue to come back to the situation in the town on that sort of wider scale, where we've always sort of, whenever we visited the town, it's been to visit an individual, it's been to spend time with a single character.
But those single characters have often had arcs. Lars and Sadie, whether we like it or not, Ronaldo. So
sure,
whilst those are character arcs, I don't see why you couldn't do it for story arcs as well.
Well, this is the thing, is because I'm in my head, I'm sort of thinking of it more from the Nanafoire perspective of what's her solution now. Then she thinks that there's issues in the town and they need to work on some stuff. Like what's the next step? But I suppose you could be looking at it from the other angle as well and saying, well, do they do anything interesting with the mayor character now? He's no longer the mayor. That was very much his identity. What happens to that character when you take that away? Maybe hilarity ensues. Maybe they do something heartbreaking or heartfelt. I don't know. Well, I didn't know, I should say. But my point stands, which is that like I could see them coming back to Dewey and exploring that, but I found it harder to think of how. And I should never ever have that thought, because these writers time and time again prove that they can make anything they want work.
Yeah, definitely.
But in the moment, my thought was, I just don't know how you make a story the size of the whole town is looking at how they deal with gem stuff a plot without interfering or taking up too much time from something I'm far more interested in, which is what's actually happening with the crystal gems. Because that would be such a big plot to start looking at. So in my head, I was looking for the eject button. I was looking for the undo. In the future, I was sort of imagining I won't say obviously whether they do or don't, but like I was imagining very much in terms of that element of it specifically, some sort of magic out that they'd come up with within a couple of episodes.
Which, I'd have been disappointed with that. I think partly because I love the notion. Like, if The Simpsons did this plot where the mayor is no longer the mayor, you would absolutely expect that, and you probably wouldn't even explain how he'd got his job back.
No, he'd just
I
be
like
the
the fact that. Yeah, I like the fact that on this show that it's a cartoon that's not got cartoon characters in the traditional sense. There's actual development, there's actual growth of all the characters.
Yeah, agreed.
And I would want that to. I see no reason why that shouldn't continue with this.
And again, though, credit to the show, credit to the writers. It's a really interesting angle on the whole situation. Yeah, the town would fucking react to several of their their number being kidnapped, as has been pointed out multiple times. There's only about 25 of them, so they would react to a handful of them being bloody kidnapped by aliens. That's like absolutely true. Like, so there are some. It's clever the way they found a way to sort of handle that, because I wouldn't have even necessarily considered that. But yeah, of course that's a reaction.
What's the implication that the man and woman Sadie was with the next day when she says, "What about Lars? He got kidnapped." Is that Lars's parents?
Yeah, we've seen them before.
Right, I couldn't remember whether we've seen them.
Yeah, there was that episode where we debated whether they were scared of him or not, because he was mooning out, and then he had that magazine that we debated. Was the implication he was like he fell asleep looking at a nudie mag? We had a whole conversation. It's the one where Steven goes into his and they do a body swap.
Yes, I'm with you now. I remember now. Do you wish we'd seen that scene?
Yeah, part of me does. But how does that not detract or suck away from, like, it's what you said last week. It's exactly what you said. You were sort of saying, like, I don't know. You're like, well, what do I want? You said this. I think you said almost this exact sentence. What do I want? Well, I want Sadie to be told. I want to see that happen. I want Lars's parents to be told. I want to see that happen. And then you went, but how's that an episode? Because you rightfully know that putting that in an episode, the episode isn't going to be about much else. It can't be. It just simply can't be.
Yeah.
So, you follow up Wanted with that conversation. It's not really an episode of television. So, while I would have personally, from the character perspective and the drama of it, loved to have seen that played out, I don't know how that fits into an existing, to a new story, or I don't know how it's a story of its own. Because it is just that conversation. Unless, the only way I thought you might have been able to do it is to have opened, after he spoke to Sadie, to gone straight to him talking to the parents, and when you think the parents are going to be really sad, they suddenly get angry, and they're a big part of the the rising social sort of outcry against the mayor, and they sort of they kick that off, and Nanafar sort of steps up then rather than her stepping up initially. But then you're taking away from the fact that she's chosen to sort of speak out against the mayor.
Which makes, I think, her speech at the end more effective. The fact that was her choice.
Yeah, It wasn't like the mayor was already sort of being yelled at. She sort of stirred that up. So the other way you could have done it, though, as I said, was that you would have had Lars's parents be the catalyst for the town sort of starting to turn on the mayor. Our son's still out there. I mean, they do that brilliant bit in this episode, actually, because that's the bit you just talked about. Sadie goes, what about Lars? And he's like, the donut boy? And then he does that. There's that amazing joke, which is, don't worry, everyone, I'll do my best to get you a new donut boy. Which
it's very good.
And then somebody throws the tomato in his face, and there's that great joke. Again, it's just so good. It's just, it's only been seen by 12 people. 12 people? That's half Beach City. So good.
Yeah, I did like that. I mean, they've done that gag before, but it was funny.
Yeah, it's really good.
We got any triv, Daniel?
I'm sure there's some triv, Christopher. Oh, that felt wrong.
I get away with Daniel better than you get away with Christopher.
Yeah, doesn't work, does it?
Daniel Frederick Dooland. Yeah. That is your middle name.
Anywho, you may have noticed, Chris, the episode is called Dewey Wins, and he very much does not win. That is likely a reference to a real life thing that happened, where in the 1948 presidential election, the Chicago Tribune newspaper incorrectly predicted the Republican candidate Thomas Dewey had beaten Harry Truman. Their headline was "Dewey defeats Truman," but of course, Truman had won.
Yeah.
So the idea is that the title of the episode made the same mistake. That's quite meta for this show. Like the idea that the title is like wrong on purpose. Like it's kind of funny. It's an odd one. Because he doesn't win, very distinctly doesn't win, but it's kind of funny. Especially with that context added.
But he doesn't lose either. He quits.
Yeah, but he definitely doesn't win.
Yeah, no,
the
you're right.
Episode's called
Thinking about
Dewey
it,
Wins.
it's an odd title.
He doesn't win.
Yeah.
He doesn't win. He doesn't win.
Yeah.
I thought I had a second to take a sip of my drink then, Chris, because I thought you were gonna keep talking, but you didn't. And then
no, because he doesn't win. So.
Connie mentions them being jam buds, which is likely a reference to when they sang the jam song. Stephen performed, Sword to the Sword.
Mm-hmm.
Come on, come on and make this. Come on and have a jam with me, or something like that. I forgot. And I skip that song every time on the vinyl. Next. It's not that good. It's not a good
song.
Not
a fan.
It's fun in the episode, but I didn't want it on the soundtrack. I've never had the urge to listen to the Jam Buds song a second time. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I feel a little bit the same way with, even though it is very funny in the episode, there's Steven's a big fat meanie, a big fat zini, a big fat meanie zucchini. That song as well is like, as a song, it's not that great. I don't know, like it's fine in the background of Steven and the Stevens when they're fighting, but I don't know if it works on an album. But anyway,
well, it's not got the emotional weight that some of the other songs have.
Well,
so
exactly. You stick it on the other bloody stick it on the other. Like you stick it between, like, I'm trying to remember what it is between on the album, but like Tower of Mistakes or something. Like I'm sure there's plenty of like super like depressing songs either side of it. It's just the way it goes. Yeah. There's a lot of mention here about the sort of how Connie's sort of situation with Stephen echoes what happened after the events of Jailbreak, when Stephen wasn't answering the phone to her, because he didn't want to drag her into Gem stuff because he thought it was dangerous. It's sort of now Connie's not answering him, and it's really sad that the show is always from Stephen's perspective, because I would love to have seen or heard the sort of the sad Connie version of that phone call song again. On the other side, where she's ignoring his calls and see what's going on. But sadly, we'll.
Yeah, I will bringing up that because I'd forgotten about that episode. I think that episode does do Stephen and Connie falling out better than this one.
Yes, but this one doesn't have the whole arc. This one, it just simply sets it up.
No, that's very true.
It's a little. Yeah, I agree with you, but it's also slightly unfair to compare on the basis of this is Act 1 of a of a
completely
story.
Fair.
We're setting it up, whereas that one got to set it up and finish it. That one is brilliant. That episode, full disclosure, is such a good episode of this show. Like one of my favorites. The song, the song from that one, with the sort of ringtone in the background, awesome. Anyway, let's have a quick look. See, this isn't all trivia. This is just like, this happened. It's like, yeah, that's in the episode. We saw that. Oh, this is the first time
I hate when they do that.
I know. This is the first time we've had Lars's surname officially canonized on in show.
Oh, that's cool.
Barriga, I think it is. Apparently, it had been put in a book that they released. Keep Beach City Weird. You Can't Hide the Truth. But this is it being confirmed.
I do not want to read that book.
No, probably. I'm guessing from the perspective of Ronaldo.
Yeah.
And I love that. And we haven't talked about this yet, but the speeches were done on the Beachapalooza stage that had been very, very carefully. The sign had been adjusted to say Speechapalooza. I don't know if you noticed.
I saw that.
That's fucking brilliant. That's so funny.
I love the notion that they just have frequent paloozas.
Well, the Beachapalooza's yearly. They've always stated that on the show. But yeah, I like the idea that they just replace that and Beachapalooza, Speechapalooza. I really enjoyed that. So that was good. Any other triv? Oh, the book How to Talk to People as it appears again. That's the second time it's appeared since Sworn to the Sword.
Fair play.
So there you go. That's it, trivia-wise.
What's your prediction for next episode, Dan? Do you think I'll last, or do you think I'm gonna suffer with the 2 hours sleep?
I think you're gonna get a second wind. I'm feeling it. Okay. Also, you promised it. You promised you'd keep energy up the whole way, and you wouldn't let anyone down. I did,
but I don't know how perky. I feel like neither of us have been perky this week, but we were very perky for the Wanted arc. So
yeah, we've come down with the episodes.
Well, can we tease that there might be an episode coming up where we're not going to get drunk, but we will start to get drunk with Steven Universe?
Yes, there's a potential for an episode where. So we yearly we do an episode of our Nothing But Static podcast where we are drunk, and usually what that means is a bit of solo drinking before we make the call and connect the and set up the podcast and a recording. This time we're going to start drinking midway through a Steven University, so that we're toasty and a bit warmed up.
I'm starting from Steven University.
Well, sure. I think
you know what I remembered the other day. Someone said something about Cheerios, and I just suddenly in my head went, "Oh yeah, when we're caught up, we get to do a Honey I Shrunk the Kids series of Steven University episodes."
I forgot we'd said we'd do that. Oh dear.
Which I love.
Oh, I don't. I don't. Why would we do that to ourselves? Right. So
we're doing a bomb. We're doing a Honey I Shrunk the Kids bomb, aren't we?
I think that was the plan. Yeah.
Yeah. All 3 movies.
Well, 4.
Some episodes of No, all 3 movies, some episodes of the TV show, and then footage from the 4D Disneyland experience.
I don't know how we get a whole podcast out of that, but sure.
Maybe
and what did we say? What did we say we were going to call it? Honey, I Shrunk Steven University.
You know, calling it that gives us the right to have shorter episodes.
Yes, it does. 10 minutes. Calling it now. That could be fun, though. That could be fun.
I'm really looking forward to it. But yeah, so
I
don't know. Do you think we've been perky?
I'm now determined that Over the Garden Wall is the move. 12 episodes.
You overanalyzed last week. I'm overanalyzing this week. Have we been perky? I feel like we've not been perky.
I mean, I feel like after your criticism of me overanalyzing last week, I find this more than a little ironic. We're fine. We're fine, Chris. It's all good.
Take us home, Dan.
Yeah. So, one last little note. We're now, because we did that wanted thing, we've moved ourselves up for our catch-up date. So our catch-up date was originally going to be the 17th of August. We've pulled that back 10 days. We are now due to be caught up with where we are currently in Steven Universe by August 7th.
Fucking hell. Like, what's nuts about that is I'm making plans for things beyond that. Do you know what I mean? Like, I have shit in the diary beyond the date that we catch up to Steven Universe.
And that's the date we catch up, Chris. We will probably because we're looking to get a bit ahead now. I mean, dear Lord, we'll be done sometime in July. Within a month, we're going to be caught up. From our perspective, recording.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we got Honey, I Shrunk Honey, I Shrunk Steven University. We got Over the Garden Wall. We're going to do episodes about Steven Universe. So I think it should be fine as long as the hiatus isn't 9 months.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we might do a theory bonus episode as well, where once we're all caught up and I don't have there's no risk of us like fucking it up completely. We can do like we'll go through some of the major theories that the show has both had and still has.
Yeah, definitely. And like we're gonna have Ronnie on for an episode, so there's plenty of good to come.
Mm-hmm. Indeed, there is. Right. Well, there you go. Cool. That is everything for this week. So I've been Dan Doolan.
I've been Chris Billingham.
And we'll speak to you next week as we discuss Gemcation.